Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a look at Steve Jobs
Ooh, exciting.
and his philosophy on closed systems. And it's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
You know how we're using technology all the time in our lives.
Right.
Turns out Jobs had a pretty strong vision for that and how we experience tech today.
I think a lot of people don't realize how influential he really was
Yeah.
in shaping the tech landscape.
Definitely. And one of the things that I found super fascinating reading through this article titled was how Jobs' early experiences, even back in his Atari days,
Oh, yeah, designing those early video games.
shaped his beliefs.
Like, that's where his passion for control over design really started to emerge.
Yeah, and it's like he really believed that you needed to control the design in order to make technology work for people.
Exactly. Make it user-friendly and intuitive.
And you wouldn't think that Atari, would lead to that. But
Right. It's not the first thing that comes to mind.
it's fascinating how it all connects.
Right.
And get this, when Jobs came back to Apple in 1997, they were really struggling. They were almost...
Yeah, on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yeah. And his closed system approach was a big part of turning things around.
It's an incredible comeback story.
It is.
From near failure to becoming one of the most valuable companies in the world.
For sure. So let's get into it. I think it's really important to define our terms here. What do we actually mean when we're talking about these closed systems?
Yeah, that's key.
And open systems.
Right, because it can get a little confusing. So let me try to break it down in simple terms.
Okay, I like it.
So imagine you have two gardens. Okay.
All right, I'm picturing it.
One garden is perfectly manicured. Everything's planned, every plant, every path.
Very controlled.
Exactly. That's your closed system, much like Apple products.
I see it.
Think about it. Their hardware, the software, even the App Store, it's all very carefully controlled with a strong emphasis on security and creating a very specific user experience.
Yeah, it's like they're saying this is the best way to experience this.
Right? They're curating the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, the second garden is more like a wild, sprawling forest.
Okay, much more freedom.
Exactly. Things are growing freely. Paths branching out in all directions.
Oh, organic.
That's your open system, and that's where you'd find things like Linux or Android.
So more flexibility, more room to tinker.
Tons of it you can customize to your heart's content.
But I guess there are trade-offs with each approach.
Always there are. And
Yeah.
Jobs was very vocal about the downsides of open systems.
Yeah, he wasn't shy about that.
He was concerned about things like fragmentation and security risks.
Right, because if everyone's doing their own thing, it can get messy.
Exactly. And for Jobs, that was a deal breaker.
So he preferred that curated garden approach. But what was it about his early days that kind of led him down that path?
Well, his time at Atari designing video games was a huge influence.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense, actually.
Picture young Jobs, ambitious, driven, creating games that needed to be instantly engaging for anyone to pick up and play.
Right, they had to be simple to use.
Exactly. And that experience really drilled into him the power of design.
The power of making things easy to understand and use.
Right. And that became a core principle for him.
Yeah, he carried that with him throughout his career.
Absolutely. It shaped his entire approach to technology.
So then he comes back to Apple in '97, and the company's in trouble.
Yeah, it was a mess, frankly.
And it seems like he saw this closed system philosophy as, like, the key to saving Apple.
Oh, for sure. It was a huge gamble.
Yeah.
But he believed that by taking control,
Mm-hmm.
by creating a truly integrated experience, that's how they could stand out.
Right, because back then, the tech world was all over the place.
There's a wild west out there.
Yeah, so Jobs saw this opportunity to create something different, something better.
And he was right. Apple's success with the iMac, then the iPod, and of course the iPhone. It proved that a closed system could be incredibly successful.
Yeah, and that really changed the game.
Completely.
So, okay, Apple becomes the poster child for this closed system. But what did that actually look like, in terms of how they built their products?
Well, just look at the iPhone. It was a perfect example of Jobs' vision.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
It was more than just a phone. It was a complete ecosystem with the hardware and software working together seamlessly.
The whole experience was designed to be smooth and intuitive.
Exactly. Every element was carefully considered to create that signature Apple feel.
Even down to the packaging.
Even the packaging, right?
Right.
It all contributes to the overall experience.
But that level of control also had its critics, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
People argued that it could stifle innovation.
Because if you're not allowing for that kind of free experimentation...
Right, then you might miss out on groundbreaking ideas.
And wasn't Jobs particularly concerned about fragmentation?
He was. He hated it.
So can you explain what he meant by that?
Sure, so imagine the Android ecosystem.
Okay, lots of different devices.
Tons of devices, all running different versions of the software.
Yeah.
And that can lead to inconsistencies in how things work.
Right. Some apps might not work on certain devices.
Exactly. You might have performance issues, security vulnerabilities. It's a mess.
And Jobs felt that would ultimately hurt the user experience.
Absolutely. He believed that consistency was key to creating a truly great product.
So he saw closed systems as a way to avoid that fragmentation.
Yeah, he wanted to maintain control over the entire experience.
There's a trade-off, right?
It is you're prioritizing control and consistency over absolute flexibility.
But this is fascinating stuff, and we've only just scratched the surface. There's a lot more to uncover about Jobs' philosophy and its impact on the world. So let's continue this conversation in part 2, where we'll delve deeper into the reasons behind his stance on closed systems and how it all played out in the real world.
Sounds good. I'm ready to dive back in. You know, it's interesting to think about how that need for control that we were just talking about played out in other parts of Apple.
Yeah, like how so?
Well, the article mentioned how Jobs was really insistent on Apple designing its own chips, for its devices.
Oh, wow. So not just the software, but like the actual hardware, too.
Exactly. He wanted that vertical integration, having control over the entire process.
I mean, that's a pretty bold move, right?
Well, it was, and it definitely paid off,
Yeah, how so?
Well, those custom chips, they've become a major advantage for Apple. They can really fine-tune everything to work perfectly together.
Oh, I see. So it's all about optimization.
Exactly. It's about squeezing out every bit of performance and efficiency.
And it makes their products stand out.
For sure. It gives them an edge that's hard to beat.
So let's dig a little deeper into Jobs' thinking here.
Yeah.
Why was he so adamant about closed systems?
Yeah, it goes beyond just the technical stuff.
That article talked about how he believed technology should almost disappear.
Right. It should just work seamlessly without you having to think about it.
Like it should be invisible.
Exactly. He used this analogy of a door handle.
Okay, a door handle.
You just grab it and open the door. You don't have to overthink.
So you don't need to know how it works.
Right. And that's the kind of experience he wanted for technology.
It should just be intuitive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he felt that by controlling the whole system, they could minimize...
I see. So it's about removing those points of friction.
Exactly. Make it smooth and enjoyable.
It's like he's saying technology shouldn't get in the way. It should just work.
Right. And it's also about accountability,
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, in a closed system, the company is totally responsible for everything. If something goes wrong, there's no one else to blame.
So it forces them to really get it right.
Exactly. They can't cut corners or pass the buck.
That makes sense.
And speaking of control, the article mentioned something else that really stood out to me.
Oh, what's that?
Jobs insisted on Apple having its own retail stores.
Really? So they wouldn't sell their products through other stores?
Nope. He didn't want to rely on anyone else to represent the brand.
Wow, that's commitment.
He wanted complete control over how Apple products were presented and how customers experienced them.
So it's not just about the product itself, but the whole ecosystem around it.
Exactly. It's about crafting that entire user journey.
It's like he's saying, we're not just selling gadgets, we're selling an experience.
Right, and that experience starts the moment you walk into an Apple store.
That's pretty insightful.
Yeah, it shows how deeply he understood the power of branding and creating a cohesive image.
But didn't all this control raise concerns about stifling creativity?
Oh, absolutely. People were worried that it would create a kind of echo chamber.
Where only a select few get to contribute.
Right, they were afraid that it would limit innovation and fresh ideas.
So how did Jobs address those concerns?
Well, he acknowledged that openness was important, but he also believed that it needed to be balanced with control.
So it's not an all-or-nothing thing.
Right. He talked about creating a semi-permeable membrane.
Okay, a semi-permeable membrane.
Open enough to let in good ideas, but closed enough to keep out anything harmful.
So it's about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly, that balance between control and openness.
It sounds like a delicate balancing act.
It was, and it took a lot of vision and conviction to pull it off.
So it's clear that Jobs saw the world differently.
He did. He had a unique perspective on technology and its role in our lives.
And it's amazing to see how his ideas have influenced the entire industry.
Even companies that traditionally favored open systems are now adopting some of Apple's principles.
It's like everyone's recognizing the value of integration and control.
Exactly. The pendulum has definitely swung in that direction.
And it's not just limited to tech either.
You see it everywhere now.
Like where?
Well, think about smart home devices, wearable technology, even the way we design software interfaces. There's a growing emphasis on creating seamless, intuitive experiences that just work.
It's like Jobs' philosophy has become the gold standard.
In many ways, it has.
And it's not just about functionality either.
Right. The article also touched on the emotional aspect of technology.
Oh, yeah. Jobs wasn't just building machines. He was creating experiences.
Exactly. He wanted people to feel something when they used Apple products.
To have a positive emotional response.
Right. He often talked about products being emotionally resonant.
And I think that's something we often overlook, you know?
It's easy to get caught up in the specs and features.
But the emotional impact of technology is huge.
It is, and Jobs understood that.
He knew how to create products that people would connect with on a deeper level.
Like the article mentioned how he insisted on the original Macintosh having a specific startup chime.
A startup chime, really?
Yeah, because he wanted to greet the user with a smile.
Wow, I never thought about that.
But it shows how much attention he paid to every detail.
And it all adds up to create that Apple magic.
It does. It's about the design, the feel, the sound, even the smell of a new product.
It's about creating a multi-sensory experience.
Exactly. And those emotions, they translate into brand loyalty and customer satisfaction.
So it's not just about making a good product. It's about making people feel good about using it.
And that's a powerful thing.
It is. And Jobs knew how to harness that power.
He was a master at creating products that people loved.
This has been so insightful.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how Jobs' vision continues to shape the world we live in.
And I think it raises some important questions for the future.
Definitely. Like, how do we balance control with innovation in a rapidly changing tech landscape?
That's something we'll need to grapple with as technology continues to evolve.
And it's a conversation that I'm sure Jobs would have been passionate about.
Absolutely. So let's continue this exploration in part 3, where we'll delve into the legacy of Jobs' vision and the challenges that lie ahead.
Welcome back to the show, and the final part of our deep dive on Steve Jobs and his closed system philosophy. We've been talking about his early influences and, the thinking behind this approach. But I think what's really striking is how his ideas, which might have seemed kind of radical back in the day,
Oh, yeah, definitely ahead of his time.
have now become like the norm.
Yeah.
It's like the whole industry has embraced this idea of creating these really seamless, integrated experiences.
It's true. He really shifted the paradigm,
You did.
He set a new standard for what we expect from technology.
Yeah, and I remember back when, computers were clunky and software was buggy.
Oh, yeah, it was a different world. And then Jobs comes along and he's like, no, this isn't good enough. Technology should be beautiful and intuitive and it should just work.
He had such a clear vision.
He did, and he actually delivered on it.
He did think about the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad.
Yeah.
They weren't just products, they were cultural moments.
Yeah, they changed everything.
And it wasn't just about the devices themselves. It was about the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
The software, the apps, the
They
services.
created a whole world.
He did, and it forced everyone else to up their game.
Yeah, suddenly user experience wasn't just a nice to have, it was essential.
It became a competitive advantage.
And it's interesting to see how even companies that traditionally favored open systems have started to adopt some of Apple's principles.
Oh, absolutely. You see it everywhere now.
Yeah, like where?
Well, think about Android, for example.
Okay, yeah, it's supposed to be the open alternative to iOS.
Right, but even there you see a move towards greater control and integration.
Like how? So
Well, companies like Samsung and Google are developing their own custom chips now. They're optimizing their hardware and software to work seamlessly together.
it's like they're taking a page from Apple's playbook.
They are, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because a more integrated approach, even within a more open framework, can lead to a better user experience.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance.
Exactly.
So Jobs' legacy extends far beyond just Apple products. It's really about a fundamental shift in how we think about technology.
It's about the expectation that technology should be both functional and delightful.
And I think that's a pretty incredible accomplishment.
It is. It's a testament to his vision and his unwavering commitment to excellence.
And it's something that continues to inspire designers and engineers today.
Absolutely. His influence can be seen in everything from smartphones to smart homes.
To wearable tech, to the way we interact with the digital world.
It's all around us.
And as we look ahead, the tech landscape is constantly evolving.
Oh, yeah, it's moving faster than ever.
So how do we navigate this ever-changing world?
That's the big question, isn't it?
How do we balance the need for control and security with the desire for openness and innovation?
It's a complex challenge.
It is, and I think it's a conversation that needs to continue.
Definitely we need to keep exploring these ideas and finding new solutions.
Because technology is such a powerful force.
It has the potential to shape our world in profound ways.
And it's up to us to ensure that it's used for good.
To create a better future for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, but I think the key takeaway here is that Steve Jobs had a profound understanding of not just technology, but human nature.
He did. He knew what people wanted even before they knew it themselves.
And he wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo.
He was a true visionary.
He was, and his legacy continues to inspire and provoke us. So we hope this deep dive has given you some new insights and maybe even sparked some thought-provoking questions of your own. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of tech and innovation.